Rev It Up Racing has rapidly expanded its depth by producing quality content with your number one coverage in Michigan and Ontario. And so, we have added Rev It Up Racing Radio to our racing media platform. Rev It Up Racing Radio is your short track racing grassroots coverage in late model, modified, ABC stock car, street stock, and four-cylinder divisions. Listen weekly for short track news, rankings, schedules, and driver interviews.
Welcome everyone to Rev It Up Racing Radio. Thank you for tuning into this week's show. We have so much to talk about in today's show with our guest, modified driver of number 7, Josh Ware, and Team Eazy Express owner JoAnne Brooks, along with Rev It Up Racing's coverage from Onaway Speedway on July 1st, Canada Day from Onaway, Michigan. Hope you enjoy the show. We're here today with JoAnne Brooks. How are you today, Jo?
Great. How are you?
Good. With you being sponsor of Eazy Express Racing, what's the primary reason behind the owner sponsorship?
It started out years ago, as you know, with Ted helping out with wanting to help drivers rather than helping the track itself. And it's continued from that. It's now become family. It is really all about family.
And now, what type of, involvement-wise, what involvement do you have now? Because you went from about 5 drivers now down.
Yeah, well, we're down because Rick Ellis has retired. Furky is pretty much ready, I think, to do the same thing. And so now it's Cody and Layla. And they're enjoying it. But they have young families, and so it's not racing every weekend across Michigan like it was for a couple of years. So their lifestyle has changed, so we accommodate as they go. Because, again, it's about family.
Exactly.
So if you can't do it with your family, then, you have to fit your family first.
And like talking to Layla, she's got a trailer.
Exactly.
So.
She's enjoying camping, and Cody's got a third one on the way. So, you know what? They're busy.
As the kids get older, they might, like, say...
I would love nothing more than to see these kids get into race cars as they grow up.
And that's exactly, like, I was on the phone this morning with the Grand Band Speedway, and they do more of the youth.
Right.
And I said to him, down there, it's perfect because it's a feeder system.
Absolutely.
Because we use here, we have Rick Ellis, who just retired, and I sat with Denny A-Hole the other day, and a lot of drivers between 45 and up. There's still a lot of them, but only a few years.
We need a few more. We need the young ones. And it's funny because Ted used to call Dennis and Cody the young guns coming up, to replace these others. And now we need to find replacements for those ones. And so we need these young ones to keep it going.
Oh, it's like I interviewed Dustin Jackson the other night. I call him Young Gun, but unfortunately, he's only 17, but 6 years behind the wheel.
Yeah,
and he's not a young gun anymore.
He's no longer a rookie. He's got some experience behind him now, and it's nice to see being able to watch these kids go through that and get to this level.
Anthony Mandarino took a picture
exactly.
the other day,
yeah.
In our area, the young kids are
they can do this.
Yeah. And the older drivers aren't putting any pushing them. You can. Just do it. They're competing.
They're competing with them. They're teaching them how they were taught, which is no different, right? Yeah. So it's good.
Here, a little bump there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
now, like say every year, Ken Ross with like Jerry Linscomb that they host the Invitational in September. Is there anything different this year? Do you know?
This year, everything is still don't fix what isn't broken, and we stick to tried and true, and it has worked for so many years now that to take away from that, we've added on by now, we try and have a band on Friday nights and a band afterwards on Saturdays. That's sort of been a little bit of an addition to it. And really, I look at the invite, it's wonderful racing. It's great camaraderie in the pits amongst all of the drivers. They might be competing on that asphalt, but in the pits they're not. But the bigger thing from my perspective is it's what happens outside the racetrack. It's the friendships and the families that have been built from that.
And that's exactly like being down at Onaway this week or talking to a track owner this morning in Southern Ontario and Norwood and Sands, and most of the tracks within 3 to 4 hours, they make sure with the hot shoe on August 13th or the Invitational in September, they move their races around so they accommodate these drivers.
Exactly.
Right?
They all accommodate the big important event for each of those tracks.
Yeah.
You know, and it's wonderful. The hot shoe is a great thing. I wish I could work my schedule so that I could actually get to one yet. I haven't had that happen yet. I'm working that way. Maybe next year. This year isn't going to happen either. But it is all about the people.
And that's exactly it. Like, talking to the pits I was talking to Rayner, Ron Rayner, and I was talking to him, and he's helping a new driver, Megan Hayes, who's 17-year-old, and she's in that. But I remember last year we were at Hot Shoe, and Jerry Ross from Echo Bay, something went on the carburetor, and Ron pulled out an extra one. And I'm not trying to be mean to hockey, but we were talking hockey before we did this. I wouldn't be able to run over to the opposition's dressing room and say, I need a new skate.
Exactly. That would never happen in hockey, but it happens in racing. I have been there. I have gone racing in the early days with Rick Leonard when we used to go. And we had something break. I can't even remember what it was. It was a bolt. Josh Ware ran through those pits until he found that bolt, and we made it into the feature. You know, that is what racers do for one another.
Yeah, and that's something I'm going to have to ask him because he's our guest, our second guest.
Well, and that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember him doing that.
Yeah, and that's those type of things. And we know out on the track it can get heated.
Absolutely.
We've seen it.
Racing is probably the most emotional sport I've ever been involved in. Hockey gets emotional, but racing can be boiling emotional.
And not to put him on the spot, but we saw a track operator last year, Mike Fox. He got emotional right on the track, and he's the operator.
Exactly, it happens. It happens. And as long as we can all walk away from that, then it's great.
Yeah, it's. I did an interview last year with JP DiPaggio and Keenan, and the following Thursday they were going toe to toe, fist to fist.
Yes.
But afterwards, I went in the pits and they're apologizing. They're having a beer
Absolutely.
Together. So
and that's what happens. It is.
Big family.
It is. At the end of the day, everybody's got one another's backs. At the end of the day,
yeah,
you know, and that is racing, and I don't think it's anything just for us in Northern Ontario. I believe it goes on in Southern Ontario. I believe it goes on everywhere. Everybody will do what they can to make sure the cars are on the track to put on a show for the fans. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to putting on a show for the fans.
Yeah, and I call it short track grassroots racing.
Absolutely.
And if it wasn't for, I'm saying, not just for people like yourself, but if it wasn't for the sponsors, because other than a few cars that are on each track, majority of them, it's all little sponsors.
It's all little sponsors. Every little dollar counts for something. When you're paying, $550 U.S. funds for a set of tires that you might get 3 nights out of, that's a lot of money for anybody. You can't just pull that kind of money out of your pocket anymore. And that goes from the 4 cylinders all the way through to the mods. Like, it doesn't matter what class you're in, your expenses, just because you're in a 4-cylinder, everybody thinks it's cheap. They have to pay for tires too, and for fuel. Yes, they're not maybe using race fuel. Doesn't matter. Their expenses still exist. And every sponsor that any racer gets is huge.
It's like we were sitting the other night at the track, and Rob Haima, he more or less, it was on purpose, car went sideways and got T-boned. And he more or less, his whole front end got pushed right up.
Right.
And people on the pitch are like, oh, he's a mechanic, he works on his own car, it's fine. The comments are fine because, yes, he can do that.
He can get the work done.
But he owns his own business. But at the same time, he's still got to pay for that.
You've still got to buy the parts.
Exactly.
All of these guys, there's nothing more anybody wants to do. Accidents will happen on a racetrack. It's just racing. And if it's just racing, then it is what it is. But there's nothing more that you love to do than watch your car roll out of the trailer at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, perfect, and roll back into the trailer, and you might have to do a little beating and banging just to put the fenders back the way they were. That's fine. That's great. But when you've got to start replacing rear ends and tie rods and brakes, it's too expensive. And nowadays, there isn't the time. Everybody's lives, again, because it's all about family, their lives are busy on a regular basis. Fitting time in to work on your race car can be difficult at best if the whole family doesn't buy into the whole racing thing.
And that's where we talk about Cody and Layla, where
Absolute.
young ones, I know, and Mike, Layla's dad, but Layla and Mike and Cody, when they're working on the cars, it comes to little kids. You're not working on the cars until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night.
Exactly, once the kids are in bed.
And if you're racing every other weekend, or some of these people racing every weekend,
it's tough.
A second job.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is a second job for them.
Now, one thing is, if you were to ever start over as a sponsor, is there anything you'd do different?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Other than trying to save money?
That's what I meant by loaded question. Saving money, but you know what? I don't regret anything we've done. You know what? It's live and learn, and you have to go through it to know how to handle it again. But I wouldn't take back any of these last 12 years, 13 years. They were every ounce of blood, sweat, tears, Ted screaming at the drivers. You know, there was a time when Rick Leonard came to the track with his tools, not even in a toolbox. They were in a box. And, you know, to watch the evolution of some of these guys is wonderful. And just to see some of these ones grow up. Would we change some things? I'm sure we would. But at the end of the day...
And for you and Ted, it started from a set of tires to a family, right?
Exactly. That's exactly it. And you know what? And when Ted passed, I had my racing family. I had my own family, but your own family can only do so much for you. And, you know, the racing family picked up my summers. And we had things to do. And you couldn't ask for better than that.
Now, is there any few big memories other than the Invitational that pop in your head over the years?
Over the years, I would say there's been a couple of trophy presentations. Rick Ellis finishing his race on his 50th anniversary was a big deal. That was a really big deal. Seeing the look on Rick Ellis's face when Ted came out from behind the motorhome. Ted hadn't been to the track most of that year. But he came out for Rick's last race to win the championship. This wasn't his last year, but he had the championship. If he hadn't raced, he wouldn't have, but he was racing. And Rick didn't know Ted was there, and Ted had been there for a while. And Ted came walking out from behind the motorhome, and the look on Rick Ellis's face was absolutely priceless. Taking the Elements to Florida and watching Denny race in Florida, that was huge. That was a big memory for Ted that he wanted. So that's one that, you know, always sticks in your head.
Yeah. And the last question, how much pride do you have in extending yours and Ted's legacy in racing?
Oof, huge. It is huge. There's something to be said for seeing a car that has Eazy all over it. That's a really big deal.
Yeah. And for Ted, it's something looking down just...
Oh, yeah. You know what? You see things and I think, oh, yeah, I know where that came from. Yeah. You know, and you go into the pits and I've said it to Rick Ellis especially. I've said, so, where do you think that happened from? He was only the man upstairs knows. And he wasn't talking about God. He was talking about Ted. Yeah. And we chuckle. But it is, you know, he looks down. We know when he's mad. Yeah.
And it's the same as like Layla, her fastest qualifying time last week.
That was phenomenal. I was out of town, so I missed it. And she texted me, and she said, have you seen my post? And I said, no, I haven't, but I'll go check now. And so it was awesome to see. And she's come a long way. She loves it. And that's the biggest thing. As long as they love getting in that car every day, that's all we can ask.
Well, and that's the guy. I saw her last week, and I said, so you're at the track instead of camping. And she said to me, I'm like, which one's more? And she goes, some days I feel like camping, but when I get to the track, I'm at the track.
It's all about the track.
Yeah.
And it is. And I think we're all that way. I think because all of our lives are so busy now with just day-to-day between work and family and other obligations. But when you get to the track, there's just this whole,
it's a switch.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. You can smell the race fuel. You smell the tires. And you have people that don't question you. There's no, you know, there's something to be said for everybody that you go to the track with.
Well, it was like the first week I showed up to the track, and like I said, the cars were on there, and as soon as those mods got on there and your chest starts pounding.
Exactly.
It's just like race season's here.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. I had the opportunity this year to, we made a trip. Larry Brunke was Rick Leonard's crew chief, and his wife and Ted and I, we all became quite close. Larry passed away at the beginning of January this year, But we had made a trip plans to go to Florida with both our families. So to see Rick's son Cameron's look on his face when those cars at Daytona started that 500, it was like, wow, blown away. And it was freezing cold where we were sitting because of the wind, and we had no sun, and he was shivering up a storm. He had every jacket, every blanket we could find on him. And I finally said, do you just want to go back to the car? I won't miss this for the world. And he stayed there and shivered. He didn't care. He wasn't leaving that. And that's the start of, and we teased him. He wants to grow up to be Layla's pit crew chief, So you have to start them somewhere.
Start them somewhere, and eventually...
He's 11. He won't see a car anytime soon because, that's just me. But, if somebody else wants to let him have a car, have at her.
It's eventually there.
Exactly.
But again, that's where, and I use, Carolyn, my wife, hates me saying it, but she will not watch NASCAR. She's not a NASCAR fan. But we'll say, we're going to Onaway, we're going to Ware, we're going to Kinross. When are we going?
And when are you going?
It's just, and I compare it to hockey in Southern United States. They like the physical, where a lot of people, and not her, but they like to go because is there going to be a crash or the sounds?
Absolutely. I get a lot of excitement out of watching NASCAR when I watch them blow up a car at $1 million, because then I don't feel so bad when we've just lost $1,500. But it's still all relevant.
The first 20 laps and the last 20 laps.
And that's all I watch on the NASCAR, really.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, where the leaders aren't up near the front, then I go and I'll Google and find out, did they have an accident? Then I care. Yeah. Other than that, it's the first bunch of laps and the last laps. Yeah, that's all that matters in NASCAR.
We were at the track the other night, and a 19-year-old was with us, and that caught us off guard.
Yeah.
But we were sitting there in the modifieds. So we had Palumbo in our area, and we had Jackson, and we had a whole bunch of Josh Ware, from our area racing. And I'm sitting behind them, and I thought they were at a fighter hockey game. They were going back and forth, and they're cheering. And
you get into it. You really do.
And this is just it's local racing, but
it's local. It's I remember doing it to Roddy Bolduc. Denny was on the track. We were at Owasso, and I can't remember if it was the Nationals, Owasso Nationals. And I was literally standing behind Roddy. He was sitting. I was standing behind him, and I had my hands on his shoulders as I was watching. And I was literally not realizing I was moving my hands, which was moving his shoulders. And it was Layla that said, "You're moving, Roddy." And I'm like, well, he hasn't said no yet, so we're okay. I'll just keep. And Roddy's laughing because I was literally moving. As the cars were moving, I was moving. And you get into it that much. That's
entertainment factor.
It is. It's a huge entertainment factor.
Yeah.
Huge.
When you can do that,
and you don't do that at NASCAR. You don't do that on a NASCAR race.
No.
It just doesn't happen.
No. And I've never been, say, NASCAR race, and a lot of people say you go to most of the tracks, you see about 200-300 meters of it, and some of the tracks are so big unless you go somewhere like Bristol or where here in any of the tracks in Ontario or Michigan,
you can see the whole track.
You see the whole track, and it's a night of entertainment.
It is, and it is good entertainment. It really, really is.
And family-wise, it's cheaper than doing a lot of other things today.
You know what? It really is.
You go to the movies for the same price as going to the track, and
if not less sometimes. Yeah. When you take into
and
consideration,
you're allowed to take your cooler into
exactly. You can take your cooler in, so you're not you're not having to pay for the high priced drinks at because some tracks are no different than canteens need to make money too.
Yeah.
And quite often they're subbed out now because the tracks can't afford to have their own canteens because they don't have the volunteers to run them. Yeah. We're really fortunate at Kinross that we have such a great group of dedicated volunteers.
Yeah. And most tracks are that way.
You know what? I haven't been to a track in this area of Michigan that I haven't run into some great track owners that welcome you with open arms. We had one, it was the guy at Owasso, and he came back to me and said, I went back for a t-shirt for somebody, and he said, I have never seen so many black and green Eazy Racing shirts at this place in a long, long time. We had one whole section. There had to be 60 of us there. It was phenomenal racing. And they just opened it with great arms to us.
And they don't mind you promoting your local track from a different area.
No.
If it's not Owasso, not Kinross or Whittemore, they have no problem. Like I was talking to, say, Oval Revving, he calls himself, Doug.
Yeah.
and he was at Merritt, and he was going down to promote Onaway, and he goes, and Kinross and that up in this area, and they don't have a problem with it because
nobody does.
If there's one or two cars
Nobody
that might come up.
Jerry went away this year to Wisconsin and had people saying, "What about your track?" Got to tell them all about it. Like, what better way?
2 new cars just to come out and try.
Exactly. You know what? And if they come up for invite, you know, I went all the way to Wisconsin and met people that are from Traverse City, Michigan, that are dirt racers. Didn't know about Kinross. They know where Kinross is. Didn't know that we had oval track racing. Told them all about it, showed pictures, etc., and sent them all the information when I came back.
So what are you going to do when you have 150 cars this year?
We are going to have a hell of a good time.
I understand.
I don't know where Billy's putting them all. That's his job.
His spray paint.
Yeah. He will figure it all out. There's no question. But you know what? I would like nothing more than to get the phone call on Thursday morning again, like I got from Jerry last year, that says, Joe, we're lined to the road already. Last year was the first time that we have ever had cars lined up on Thursday morning. We have them lined up.
And parked for the night.
For the night. Like, people left, they came with truck and trailer and either left and or camped. And we have never seen that. We have had people come over Thursday night after work, you know, and just have, not even in line, just there, camped, and then pull in line on Friday morning. Never have we ever had that.
No, were they truck and trailer just sitting there?
Exactly. Like, we were triple
hotel,
lined up by Friday morning. And that was the best thing we could have ever seen. You know, yes, we got rain throughout it, but you know what? And I was at the pit gate handing out the checks when they left. And there wasn't a person there that said they would never come back. Every single one that came from another track said they would absolutely make sure they put us back on there.
And
if they were new.
Something about the track and Jerry.
It does.
And not just Jerry.
It does.
Like they say, Kinross being a family over there, the volunteers. It says something about the Foxes and everybody down.
Absolutely. Right? The Foxes let Jerry and I have an invite. That's how I look at it. They take the responsibility and they're letting Jerry and I and his mom and all of the volunteers do this. You know, and I have such a minuscule part of it, but I'm glad I still have a part of it. You know, his mother is still out there right now working on sponsorship dollars and things for the drivers' payouts, because that's our big thing with the invite. It's not about money for the track. The invite is about money for the drivers, because that's Ted's whole thing was, you know, sometimes the drivers, they just need that extra little bit. So this is their turn to get that extra bit. And we do it for invite. And she's always come through, and she's, you know,
doing it again this year. And she's there every other Sunday. Still helping.
She is. She helps. There isn't, you know, there's nothing she would never do for her son, but at the same time, she loves racing too.
I think Jerry just has a curse over all of us.
That thought has crossed my mind a few times, but there's many a days that I've been very thankful for Jerry.
Yeah. And for Kinross, and not just Kinross, he does like promoting just short track racing all over.
Period. Exactly. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be here at Kinross. You know what? If we have to keep the sport alive. Yeah. It's that simple.
And going back to a little, like Dustin Jackson said to me the other night, I said to him, he'd been in 17. He goes, I think my NASCAR ambitions or dreams, I don't know where they are now compared to when he was 11.
Absolutely.
Right? But I said to him, at 17, you don't give up anything because you don't know.
You don't know.
But he goes, just the way it is today, because at 11, the dreams are so much bigger than 17. Plus, at 17, there's a lot of other things going on.
Well, exactly, because he plays hockey. He has other things. Exactly. He has other things to do.
But watching him out there on the track, even at 17, with Rob Heima, who's been racing since 1981.
Exactly.
And like you say, he won the feature in the Super Lates. So it doesn't matter what age you are. It's still for fun.
It is for fun.
And the kids at that age, if they get something from it,
absolutely. If he can go somewhere with this, then have at her. Yeah. You never give up those dreams of being able to be that NASCAR driver.
But Dad just says they need to win a couple $1 million.
They do need to. Yeah, I can see their predicament in that. You do need it because unfortunately, you have to bring a sponsor with you, even to NASCAR.
Yeah.
So there's no question. The sponsorship goes right from grassroots all the way to the top.
Well, thank you very much, JoAnne.
All right, thank you very much. All right.
Good day, everyone. We're here with modified driver Josh Ware, the number 7 from Barbour, Michigan. How are you today, Josh?
Good, Jay. You?
Good. You were just mentioning before we got on air that you were under a car, and I said that doesn't usually change from every night of the week, right?
Correct. You got to do your homework. Do your homework at home before you go to the track.
Exactly. Like say, some people just take the car out of the trailer, they race, put it back in, they don't take it back out to the following week, right?
All right. Those are the people that usually run around at the tail end of the field.
Understandable. Well, Josh, like you say, on June 23rd, you're coming off a fourth at Owasso. The following night, 24 hours later, you came off fourth place at Spartan, and then this past weekend on July 1st, you came off a second at Onaway. Can you talk about that successful week of racing and how you did?
Sure. I got wrecked the week before at Onaway and was busy putting the car back together. Kind of got down to Owasso late. Didn't get much for hot laps. Just got to scuff some tires. Set fast time. Had to start at the tail end of the field. It was good racing. There's some guys that use up a little more track than I like them to, but, that's part of racing. You got to deal with it. I ended up coming all the way to third and finished third that night. Nick Lakota won. Jason Parrish got second. And then the following day, we went to Spartan, which is a track I've never been to. A little smaller than Kinross. Got a concrete wall all the way around it. Started off the day mid-pack, made some adjustments, moved up the field, and qualified into fourth position. After the invert, I started fifth row inside, and I made it lap 11. I think I made it all the way up into first place on the outside of David McManus, but outside line is not a very fast line there. The inside is the preferred line, and I just couldn't make the pass to get to the inside. I had a bunch of cars kind of hold me out there and pass me, so I had to fall back in line at like sixth, and then I worked my way back up to fourth to finish the race, so I wasn't too bad there. And then this last weekend, we were in Onaway, went down. I was second fast time behind Dustin Jackson. Made some adjustments. The toe got knocked out of whack. For the feature, it started off really well, and it was actually a fast car. Adam Rowe ended up winning. I just couldn't. Every time I tried completing the pass on the outside, a caution would come out. So there it would revert to the last completed lap, and that's where I finished with second place there.
No, we were down on the way and we watched the race. Now, do you think, and like say it's not against Adam at all, but if you had a couple more laps, do you think you would have got him?
I think I could have maybe worked them on the outside. My car seems to get better as the race goes and not the other direction, so my car usually doesn't fall off much during a race.
Now, the thing is you mentioned, like, say, Owasso, Kinross, Onaway, Spartan. Now, when it comes to different tracks, do you have to change your driving when it comes to each track?
Yeah, you do. You gotta keep some discipline on that gas pedal because obviously there's some big tracks and little tracks. I don't change much for motors, so I have a very stout motor under the car. I just try to adjust my driving style a little bit and make some adjustments to the car to make it work for that track and drive it from there.
And with different tracks, like I use Kinross, that's like say the closest one to both of us, I guess, when it comes to racing. But I use something like Onaway where you're qualifying during the day, and a lot of times you're running your features at night. Does that change the style of driving or how you have to drive compared when you're qualifying during daylight compared to night?
It changes the setup of the car. It all depends, I guess, at night if it gets really cold and the dew comes out, or if it just stays cool and no dew. But it definitely does change the setup of the car, and that's something you got to account for as the day goes on. I start off a little loose, and hopefully by usually the nighttime, the car tightens up just about to where I want it.
And like you say, this year with the way the spring's been, or early summer, I wouldn't want to be, like say, you do a lot of the work yourself or some people who help. I surely wouldn't want to be those people right now yourself because the weather's all over the place, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And you don't know what's going to happen from one week to the next.
Yeah, like you say, the other night we were down at Onaway, and like say during the day it was beautiful, and at nighttime people almost had their parkers on. So for drivers and mechanics,
correct,
they're switching everything, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's the joys of being in northern Michigan. You know,
exactly.
The further south I go, I don't seem to have that problem. It usually stays relatively still warm in the evening, and you never have a dew down south.
No.
So the dew thing is kind of it's just a northern thing, and it's something a little different you got to get used to.
And that's like we were talking to JoAnne Brooks earlier today when we were doing the show and talking about the tracks and stuff like that, and short track racing being almost like a family like, and people willing to help people on that. But the biggest thing, and being, I guess you call it a weekend warrior, what's the biggest reason you do it?
For the love of it, the thrill of it, and the rush of it.
And then you don't. There's no use to even explaining it, because that explains it all, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and when I was talking to her earlier about how the small, like say, people are willing to help each other when it comes to racing, and she mentioned she forgot you were going to be a guest on the show today about you. You were at one of the tracks and trying to help one of the drivers, and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, just looking for a certain screw. And said Josh Ware said that's a family when he's willing to run through the pits to help somebody, and like I say, it wasn't even for your car, and that's what short track racing is about. And she asked me if you'd remember that track and what you were doing.
I don't remember that track. I've helped so many people throughout the years of racing, but Saturday night in Onaway, there was a guy from Detroit, Michigan that come up and didn't have a spare trailer tire. Well, I had 3 of them, so he ended up with one of my spare trailer tires to make it back home.
And that's the thing, and I mentioned to her earlier, is like she was involved with a junior hockey team for years, and you'd never go over to the other dressing room and say, "Can I borrow a skate?" or "Can I borrow a stick?" if something happens. Where we're racing on the track, you're not enemies, but on the track, you're not best friends. But as soon as you get off, you're willing to help everybody, aren't you?
Correct. You're all out there for the same thing. You're all out there to do the best you can and hopefully be the top finisher for the evening. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but I'm always willing to help a hand to whoever needs it.
And that goes back to, like say, the family atmosphere, or just the weekend warrior, where you're willing to help, because if 1 or 2 cars go down, you might start a field with 10, you might end up with 6, and if you can help somebody to compete a bit against, hopefully the next week that they're going to help you out, right?
Correct. And I've met a lot of great friends through racing, and in the racing community and family is a pretty close knit thing. Don't get me wrong, there is some animosity out there between certain drivers. You're going to have that.
What sport doesn't? Right?
Yeah, for the most part, everyone helps one another out.
Now, for the rest of the summer, again, we still have 2.5 months of racing. Like say you've done. Like say you do Kinross quite regularly, Onaway quite regularly. Is there other tracks that you're looking at this summer?
Yeah, I plan on going to Auto City in Clio this coming weekend. It's the Wind Pusher 70. The following weekend, I'll be back down. After the Wind Pusher 70, I'll be home to race Kinross on Sunday. After this weekend, the following weekend will be a 75 lapper at Dixie Motor Speedway and Birch Run, along with a 75 lapper at Whittemore the following night. It's kind of a little warm-up or a prelude to get your car kind of ready for the hot shoe following in August. So, and I do plan on hitting Toledo and maybe a couple other tracks down south.
Now, when it comes to, like say, short track racing, is there a few big memories that you have about over the years with racing that you can remember that have stayed with you?
I do. I remember racing with George Wilson and going down the straightaway one day and looking over at him, and he flipped up his shield and gave me a smile. Well, he's missing a couple of teeth, and I'll never forget that. But I won the Randy DeWitt Memorial 3 years in a row in my super late model. Won 2 years in a row of a car that I bought from Sam Bowling that was previous Harold Ross car, and then the last year I won it, I was in a car that was owned by Pat Stump, that was originally owned by Randy Sadison. So I've been around a couple cars. I raced for Bud Gray a little bit. That's what got me kind of into the modified thing. I won the Nationals at Owasso in his car. I finished very well at Auto City, a couple races, almost won the Greg Yost Memorial. Bud has been a big influence on me for traveling just because he wanted me to go race Angola. And he asked me, he goes, "You ever been to Angola?" I'm like, "Yep." So we go down there, and then he's trying to tell me how to drive the track. And he's like, "I thought you've been to Angola." I said, "I have, just to watch, not to drive." So from there on out, we just became pretty good friends, and he's got a great family, and we do a lot of racing together. We try to hit some tracks together, and some tracks we don't make it to one another with, but we always keep each other informed of what's going on at the other track too. So.
And now you mentioned like George Wilson, but when you get onto the track and like say, who are some drivers that you, like you say, you like to race against, and or who are, I guess, a good stiff competition?
Cody McLean's always great competition. Dustin Jackson, Jay Palumbo, Todd Jackson. There's several people from up here, but you go downstate and the list is longer than both of my arms. I mean, there's one or two harebrained people I really don't care to race with some days, but other days they're okay. I guess it's, to each their own. Everyone's a little different, and I can't say that they didn't have a bad day previous to being on the track with them, and maybe that could be influencing their driving style too. But I've raced with a lot of clean racers, and I've raced with a lot of rough racers. So,
and I did an interview the other night with Dustin Jackson after him winning the late model feature at Onaway.
Yep.
And now and I asked him again. We were on camera at the point, but with a full crowd, and now with what Mike Sturgill is doing at Onaway, and it's giving actually the drivers another track to race again, consistently. Now, does it affect, even though you're going behind the wheel and with those speeds and everything, does it give you more, like you say, motivation when you see a crowd like that when you're racing?
Oh, for sure. You definitely want to always put on a show for the crowd. And it seems like the bigger the crowd, the more of a show you want to put on, Some of the shows I travel to, like the Snowball Derby, for instance, you go down there and there's a tons of people in Pensacola, Florida, and it's the middle of the winter race, and you want to do good, but so does everyone there.
Yeah.
I mean, the best of the best usually go to the big shows, and that's why I enjoy going to them. Usually the crowds are really decent because all the big shows are very well advertised, and Mike Sturgill has got a real good thing going on at Onaway. He's been doing a lot of advertisement. He's been doing a lot of driver talking to them, getting their feedback. He's starting, so it's new. He's definitely improved, and I can see nothing but good things to come from that track. So,
and for people who are, say, 2 hours south of the Mackinac, or anybody in the UP, it's a close enough. It gives you guys another option to race, and most of the tracks try to work together when it comes to scheduling. So it's different weeks. You can be at different tracks, and for him, it just gives another option for drivers, right? Correct. I mean, it is nice being able to bounce around, and it's nice to not have to step on somebody else's schedule because somebody else has a race and you want to participate there, but you also want to support your local people too. So it's kind of tough, but you try to make the best decisions you can, and hopefully you don't make anyone mad over it, No, we were talking, like I say, we were talking off air the other day, and about, I think, is your son 13?
Yep, my boy is 13.
Now, has he any ambition to get behind that wheel?
He actually raced a go-kart around Kinross at the age of 7. I put him in a Coyote go-kart with a 12-horse animal motor that ran on alcohol with a restrictor plate, and he loved it. But he got into hockey, and that's been his dream and passion for the last 4 years, and it's hard to deny a kid of something he really wants to do. So he wants to put his time and effort into hockey, and I stand behind him 100%.
And hockey's not a cheap sport, but it's probably cheaper than racing a car every other weekend somewhere, isn't it?
I don't know. They're both pretty costly, but you know what? I guess you do anything for your kids.
Oh, exactly. I got a 19, 23-year-old, and you do anything for them, and it's something. But again, he's young. It's something eventually, if he gets behind the wheel, it gets something, again, like the Grays and the Almonds, and when it comes to family, it's something you can do. But he comes to the track every so often, though, doesn't he?
Oh, he's at Kinross every week. He does stuff with his mom. He likes to go camping in the summer, and he's got a bunch of friends that he hangs out with. So I don't want to deprive him of being a kid also. But, he does like coming downstate and going to some bigger shows with me. He's really anxious. He's getting his driver's license here in a couple of years. So we made a deal. As long as the grades in school stayed up, we would purchase an old hot rod and redo it with me and him redoing it so he would have a nice summer vehicle to drive.
So, and again, that might get him the bug, but again, being a parent, sometimes you might not want him behind the wheel on the track, right?
Yeah, you may not, but I mean, I think he can get just hurt just as bad in playing hockey or doing football or any other sport. You don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen. You just got to prepare and be the safest you can at the time.
Oh, you can bowl and break a finger or drop the ball on your toe too, so you never know how
Correct,
you're going to get
correct.
hurt. Right? So now,
yes, sir.
One question I always ask people, when it comes to thanking people, is there anybody out there you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I would really like to thank my boy, Zach. He's the one that when I first started racing super late models, he would come with me, and he was my biggest fan. Obviously, I'd like to thank my parents because they put up with a lot of engine noise, working on cars late, driving by their house late at night. I'd also like to thank Jim Hanley, a gentleman I met through Mickey Meyer this year. He's an engine builder from downstate, and currently I have his motor in my car. He is rebuilding my motor at the present time. I'd like to thank Mickey Meyer from Mickey's Sleds out of Midland, Michigan. He's a great racing friend, and he ended up buying a modified from Todd Jackson this last year, and we've been doing a lot of racing together. I race snowmobiles for him in the winter. And then I do have a couple other sponsors. I got Stubbs Trucking from Brimley, Michigan. I have Kaisner Construction that I work for here in the Sioux, and also Corey Kempf Masonry from the Sioux also. He's a cousin of mine and really likes to racing and wanted to be involved and wanted his name on my car, and it's hard to deny someone like that. So.
And is there always room in the car for more?
There is, yes, always.
And how do people go about that if they wanted their name or their logo on the number 7?
Oh, all they got to do is contact me. They can reach me via Facebook or via telephone. Most everyone in the racing community has my telephone number anyway. So.
And now you mentioned again the snowmobile racing, and that's something like again I'd like to touch about you going into maybe in the new year about doing it again, talking about the racing. But is there what's the biggest difference? I know it's ice compared to pavement, of course. But what do you find harder, like the I-500 here in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan? What's harder, pavement or ice?
The I-500 is not the hardest ice race I've been on. It's the longest due to the fact of 500 miles, and some of the racing, like previous years, it didn't get plowed very much. But over the last year or so, things have changed, and it looks like the racing is. I mean, the safety aspect of it, there was very few crashes, very few cautions last year. It's the little half miles that really get to you, like Lincoln, Kinross, Escanaba. I've raced. Escanaba's tiny. I've raced Brimley. Eagle River. Eagle River is a phenomenal track, but it's got some banking, and it's super, super tight corners. But the half-mile tracks, you're not on the snowmobile as much as you are in a mile. At the Sioux, you get 16 seconds of straightaway, so you get to relax. 16 seconds in between each corner. You get to sit up and sit straight. You can look around and check stuff out, whereas half miles you are hanging off the seat, turning the bars to the right, giving it gas, and going left.
So you find probably, like you say, being on the snow machine is a little bit harder than being in the car then. When it comes,
it's a much more physically demanding sport.
Oh, and it's colder too, right?
Yeah, it's colder, but you're not very cold on a snowmobile. When your adrenaline's going like that, I wear the thinnest layer of long underwear underneath the thinnest snowmobile suit possible, and obviously all my safety gear. But I wear no insulation in my clothing. I wear the very minimal underclothing underneath of it, just because your body's hot, you're moving around constantly. You're not sitting still for any minute. You get off the sled, and the very first thing you're looking for is water, to replenish your body. So, and you got to eat right. I do a lot of running, doing construction all summer long. I don't exercise as much in the summertime because I'm constantly doing construction. But as soon as construction's over, I start hitting weights. I start running. It's just a very physically demanding sport.
And when it comes to the 500, how many drivers would you have, say, with you when you're doing that 500 miles on your team?
One co-rider usually.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to count on my co-rider for at least doing half the race. The first year I ever raced I-500, I did 360 40 laps of the 500. So there was three of us, and I was just a backup rider. And my main driver ended up wrecking the snowmobile and breaking some ribs and breaking a wrist. So he was done for today. And my other co-rider, I felt comfortable on my sled. So the sled owners just kind of let me ride it out and kind of felt me out. And the next year I have my own team. So
it's something going in the new year. We'd love to do it again with Rev It Up Racing Radio about talking more about the I-500 compared to racing. So if you're up for that, that'd be great. For sure. Well, Josh, I can't thank you enough, and good luck this weekend, and hopefully we'll see you at Kinross.
Sounds good, Jay.
Thank you.
Nobody gets you closer to the action than Rev It Up Racing. For all your short track racing and late model, modified, ABC stock car, street stock, and 4-cylinder divisions, visit revitupracing.net. That's revitupracing.net for all your racing coverage.